Hello there, and welcome to the 73rd episode of the Retrotopia podcast. My name's Alan, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the more controversial, the more divisive entries in the long-running Final Fantasy series. That's right, I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIII. It's another one of our semi-special solo episodes, going on my own to ramble on about an RPG, which is a bit of an undertaking, taking a bit of a leaf out of Brian's book here and seeing if I can do it half as well as he does. If you are just here for the Final Fantasy talk, of course, then you can just scroll on about 20 minutes or so and you should get to the game conversation. Well, I say conversation, very one-sided conversation. But stick around, because we've got some comments and questions from our Patreons that are always fantastic. I do have to get some shameless self-promotion out of the way as well. So stick around and have some fun with us. Or don't. Up to you. You do what you want to do. Who am I to tell you how to live your life? We have socials, of course, all of which you can find at linktree/retrotopia. That's linktr.ee/retrotopia. I'm not going to list all of our many social media platforms on here like I usually do, because you can find them all there, all on Linktree. You can find them all there. What I would like to shout out, on the other hand, is our Discord, which you can come along and join for free. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful little place to talk about games, movies, music, generally just lift each other up when we're down. It's a wonderful, non-toxic little community, and we'd love to have you to come along and join the party. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Patreon, which is free to join. You can listen to all of the main shows. You can listen to our quick review series, Quick Play, every Tuesday, which is a nice little bite-sized chunk of game review. Either Sam, Brian, or myself will pick a game and discuss it, and it's usually a good time. You can also listen to our gaming discussions monthly podcast, Retro Bites. You can get that 15 whole days earlier than everyone else, complete with an extra topic for discussion tacked on the end there just for you lovely Patreons. You can also vote in polls. You can have your say on the episode. You can have your say in our 9-bit banter box. It's really a lot for a very, very little. Of course, if you do feel like supporting us just that tiny little bit extra, for $2 of your hard-earned cash, you can get all of the above. You can listen to our Retrotopia After Dark series, which is basically just a 10 to 15 minute little banter session before we get into the main episode proper. You can also pick a quick play. So as discussed before, our mini review show, you can pick a game of your choice, pick a host of your choice, and get us to review the game for you. And frankly, I love it, because I have had the opportunity to play so many games I would never have looked at twice, and it's been an amazing time. Alrighty, that's enough of that then, and now to hear from some of you guys in a section that is sometimes controversial, sometimes divisive, but always culturally elegant. It is the 9-bit banter box. Okay, and first up on the box today we have The Big Deal, who says, what was growing up with the Master System like? And what were your favourite games on it? Also, what did you Brits think of the box art? And did it just require a fine palate of yours that enjoys biscuits and crumpets? Ooh, great question. I do enjoy biscuits and crumpets. Quite a bit, actually, as my waistline will attest to. Growing up with the Master System, I don't know. We had it fairly briefly growing up until, I mean, we were told that the console was broken in a scuffle between my brother and myself. Whether or not that's true, or whether it was just a quote-unquote broken, as told to us by the parents, just so they could get a bit of peace and quiet, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I loved the Master System. I mean, all I remember having as a kid was Alex Kidd, which was built in, and Dick Tracy, neither of which are really good games. So all of my favourite games for the Master System came when I ended up playing it around a friend's house again as a child. So I still had a history with the Master System even after our one died. Obviously, the Sonic game, Sonic Chaos in particular, I love that game. Road Rash, I remember playing quite a lot on the Master System. Shinobi, loved Shinobi, could not get anywhere with it, but I loved that. Shinobi and Sonic, probably my favourite games on the Master System. I used to like Marble Madness as well, but just a great little system. I love the Master System. Thank you very much, big deal. Not Timothy, Tomothy O'Houlihan goes on to ask us, hello there, good sir. I know you strive to finish the games that you start, so I was curious. Do you just play on the difficulty the game defaults to? Does it matter to you what difficulty it's on, and do you ever drop down to easy if it's an extreme challenge, or would you rather push through before dropping your difficulty? Great question, Mr. O'Houlihan. It's I don't really care all that much about the difficulty of the game I'm playing. I'll generally play it on the default or normal difficulty, whatever. I rarely change the difficulty. That said, if it's a game that I really enjoy and I want to get all the achievements for or trophies for, or what have you, I will try the harder modes, like your Resident Evil games and things like that. But no, doesn't really matter to me, and I'm not particularly proud. If it's a game that I want to see through or I want to see the story for, I'll drop the difficulty down, and I have done in the past a number of times. I'll give it a fair swing. So it will take a lot to get me to drop the difficulty, but if I have to, I will. Because, as you say, I do like to finish all of the games that I play, for better or worse. Thank you, Tomothy. Sharkbite says, I may think that the game is trash, but it does have redeeming qualities. They are amazing music, great graphics, and okay storyline. My fave song from the game is Saz's theme. Do you have a fave song from this game? I think that this probably could have gone into the comments section. I should have read that there instead, I think. But no problem, I'll read this here. Saz's theme is great, like the old slap of the bass. Great track. It's Snow's theme though, and it's not even close. I mean, this game has some fantastic music. I love the music. Final Fantasy, I mean, you know what you're getting. You're getting great music. You're getting some of the top graphics. But yeah, Snow's theme, and a little peek behind the curtain here is I won't be doing the editing for this episode. Our man in the chair, Brian, will be editing this episode, and I am certain that he's going to put Snow's theme in here somewhere because he loves it as much as I do. Blaine the Hoagie Man says, Dear Dr. Alan Grant, which video game character wears the greatest hat of all time? I'd just like to point out that a couple of you, where you've written Alan, you've misspelled it, much like Brian did on the post for this episode. So I love the fact that you guys are rolling with that. Which video game character wears the greatest hat of all time? God, there are so many good hats in video games. I don't want to go too cliche by saying something like Mario or Link. Although Link's hat, Enzo, I think it's called, in the Minish Cap, is a strong contender. Do you know what I am going to say? I am going to show some love to Vivi from Final Fantasy IX, since we're talking Final Fantasy today, and I didn't actually plan that. Vivi, that great big floppy wizard's hat, because I think a wizard's hat is one of those quintessentially most awesome hats, and I think it's fairly iconic on the character. Yeah, that'll do. And then finally, Wildcards. Oh, here we go. Wildcard says, hang on. Alan, I don't pay you for your opinions. I don't pay you to talk about video games. I only pay you for one damn thing, and you aren't delivering. So I ask you, where the hell are my pictures of Spider-Man? Oh, jeez. Wildcard, you will get your pictures of Spider-Man when you damn well pay for the ones that I already gave you, you cheapskate. Yeah. So don't come in here with that noise. And that's it for the 9-Bit Banter Box. Thanks everyone for writing in. What have I been up to? Games-wise, well, where I think last time I spoke to you, it was a bit of a deluge. Now it's a bit of a drought. I just completed the Tasmania game on the Mega Drive yesterday, and I'm going to be starting Tasmania Escape from Mars very, very shortly, because that's going to be a bit of a double-header episode for Retrotopia coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to save my thoughts on them for then. I've been playing Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance, but I've been playing it on the Switch Online again for an upcoming episode, and I have never played a Fire Emblem game before in my life, and I'm only, in the first few hours of the game, and I'm enjoying it. Bit wordy, but I think I can see myself getting along with this one. And mine and Mrs. P's co-op odyssey continues unabated, and we are currently playing, Mario 3D World, the one on Switch with Bowser's Fury attached to it. So we're working our way through that on co-op. We played it way back when it came out, but only got a little ways into it before we got distracted by something shiny and moved on. So we've gotten back onto that with a mind to actually finishing it this time. And I think that's probably all I'm playing. I mean, I'm still dabbling with Sonic Spinball. I will beat that fucking game because I can't move on to the next Sonic game unless I beat Sonic Spinball, and that game is just fucking me over. So watch this space.
I'm just going to cut in here real quick. This is Brian from Retrotopia, the guy you haven't heard that much this year because I've been busy, but you know what? I'm still behind the scenes doing the editing. We ran a poll in the Discord, which you can find a link to down in the description of this podcast, where we decided to let Discord members choose who would do the Gentleman's Interlude this week because Alan was doing the whole episode himself. So we ran a poll, and we have, obviously 3 people from 3 nations. I'm Canadian, Sam is American, and Alan is British. Britain. He is Britain. But, so the poll ran for about a week, and a lot of people voted, and we came up with the winner of who's going to do the Gentleman's Interlude, and I'm going to start it out with a short clip of their national anthem. So, enjoy the Gentleman's Interlude by this fella. That's right, Alan won anyway, so here's Alan.
Final Fantasy XIII is a role-playing game developed by Square Enix, initially released in Japan on December 17, 2009 for the PlayStation 3. It was later released in North America on March 9, 2010, and in Europe on March 2010. The game is part of the esteemed Final Fantasy series, which has been a cornerstone of the RPG genre since its inception in 1987. Final Fantasy XIII is the first entry in the Fabula Nova Crystallis subseries, which shares a mythos and universe, but with distinct narratives and characters. The development of Final Fantasy XIII was spearheaded by director Matomu Toriyama, with Tetsuya Nomura contributing as the character designer. The game utilized a highly ambitious design, particularly with its graphical fidelity, pushing the PlayStation 3 hardware to its limits. The development process took roughly 5 years with a team of over 300 individuals working to create this expansive world. The final product showcased stunning visual detail, including intricate character models, realistic environments, and breathtaking cutscenes that were a hallmark of the series at the time. The game is set in a futuristic world known as Cocoon, a floating city in the sky, and Pulse, the wild, untamed land below. Players follow a group of characters including Lightning, a determined soldier, Snow a passionate warrior, Hope a young boy seeking revenge, and Vanille an enigmatic woman. The narrative revolves around their struggle against the oppressive forces of the Foul Sea, powerful deities who control the fate of humanity. The party's journey is one of self-discovery and defiance against a predestined future which forms the core thematic element of the game. In terms of gameplay, Final Fantasy XIII departs from the series' traditional turn-based combat system in favor of a more dynamic, real-time battle system known as the Paradigm Shift system. Players can switch between roles such as attacker, healer, or defender in the heat of battle, allowing for a deeper level of strategic planning. The game also introduced a linear progression system, which was a point of contention among fans, as it limited player exploration in the early parts of the game. However, the game's vast and detailed world became more open after the midpoint. The soundtrack composed by Masashi Hamauzu was another highlight, with its haunting melodies and orchestral compositions adding depth to the game's atmosphere. While Final Fantasy XIII received critical praise for its graphics, combat system, and music, it also faced criticism for its linearity and narrative pacing. Nonetheless, it remains a significant chapter in the Final Fantasy series, setting the stage for its sequels, Final Fantasy XIII-2 and Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy XIII. Okay, that's quite enough of that. Thank you, Alan. So, before we get into the game chat, we have some thoughts, some opinions about Final Fantasy XIII from you guys. So let's get into some of this. Let's get into some of this. Let's remember how to speak. Wildcard kicks things off with: is it really the Final Fantasy if this is the 13th? That's a good point, Wildcard. You know what? Maybe the Final Fantasy is the friends that we made along the way. Uh, yeah. I mean, it's the age-old joke, isn't it? You know, Final Fantasy is it the yeah, yeah, I get it. Be a shame if it was though, because I really, really enjoy Final Fantasy, and I don't want to see it end. Thanks, Wildcard. Fallen Snow Kiku says, see, I think this game gets kind of a bad rap. Is it one of the weaker Final Fantasies? Sure. Is the story like reading a recap for some anime that's been running 15 years that doesn't actually exist? Yeah. Does it suck that if your leader dies in the battle counts as a loss? I'll hear that. Is it gorgeous to look at and have some of my favourite designs in the franchise? Also, yes. Does it have the first and so far I think only unambiguous lead character who is a woman? Yes, and for me, as a female gamer, that's a pretty big get. And was it my first Final Fantasy? Also, yes. So I'll always have a soft spot for it. I also never really finished it, so I got stuck on some boss or another. I'll go back and play it someday, maybe after I've played one of the ones I haven't played that won't cause an internet flame war if you bring it up. Um, you know what, Kiku? I can't find a single thing in that entire paragraph that you've just written that I disagree with. Um, I am a steadfast defender of Final Fantasy VIII. That was the first Final Fantasy game I ever played, despite the fact that some people shit on that game. So I get where you're coming from. If this is your first experience with Final Fantasy, it's, you know, you're never going to forget your first, are you? Um, yes, it's very, very lore heavy. And I think you worded it perfectly there, because it kind of feels like you've been dropped in the middle of something that is kind of explained piecemeal, so it is a bit overwhelming at first with all the terms and all the lore. So but yeah, gorgeous game, sounds amazing. The character designs are just fucking gorgeous. The whole game just looks stunning. So yeah, I agree with you, Fallen Snow Kiku. Brilliant comment. Timothy O'Houlihan says, I have now tried Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, and 10 and never never ever, he says, ever, never made it through a single one. What are the chances this is the Final Fantasy for me? Do you know what? It's funny you should mention that because I think that this game is so different from all of the other Final Fantasy games that you've mentioned that I wouldn't write it off. People do complain about the linearity of this game, and I think that makes it sufficiently different that if you're not getting on with Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8. I mean, I'd argue 10 is perhaps a bit more linear than most as well. Um, but I think give it a go because maybe what you didn't get on with the other ones, this, you know, in its departure from the usual Final Fantasy template, maybe this will be the one that vibes with you. Maybe this is the one you'll get on with. Um, yeah. Sharkbite says, Final Fantasy 13, the famous hallway simulator, at least till it opens up late game. This game took me 10 years to finish because I couldn't kill the final boss, so gave up for 10 years. I hated the whole battle system. I mean, if your leader dies, then it's game over. I mean, what the fuck, man? I just think there was some bad decisions made in creating this game. Fantastic music, though. Yeah, again, there we are. The music, can't agree with you more. Absolutely fantastic. And yeah, having your lead character, whoever's leading the party, die, and that's it, game over, that did stick in my craw a little. I'll agree with that. Um, uh, 10 years to finish because I had yeah, some of the bosses are difficult, and the hallway simulator, that did make me laugh because yeah, that is what they say about this game. It's a hallway simulator, but I didn't hate it for that. I Final Fantasy 13 the hallway simulator is okay by me. Blaine the Hoagie Man says, I have no opinion of this game one way or another. Uh thanks for chiming in, Blaine. I have an opinion of you one way or another. I'm not going to tell you what it is though. No, I'm joking. I love you, Blaine. Super Dave says, my expectations on this episode are untempered, unfettered, and unreasonably high for your opinions on the playable cutscene of a Final Fantasy game. I am a fair weather defender of 13 after it opens up the world, but getting to that point is a tall order. 13 has some of my favourite music in the entire franchise, however. There we are, back to the music again. Agreed. I will slightly disagree with you, Super Dave, as I go into the episode. It's not the linearity of the game that bothers me. In fact, I did almost fall off of it when it did finally open up because I'd gotten so used to playing a certain way that once it actually gave me an open world, I was just like, oh, I don't want this now. So, but I get it. I hear what you're saying. Shout out to Super Dave as well because when I was talking about doing this episode, Super Dave did volunteer to hop on with me, but Super Dave is far too intelligent, and I wanted this to be an idiot's guide to Final Fantasy 13 because that's what I am, and that's what I'm going to give you. But thanks anyway for the offer, Super Dave. I really appreciate it. Okay, once again, thanks everyone for writing in. I absolutely love hearing from you. It's God, so much fun. All right, let's get into it. So sharpen your completely fucking impractical swords, make sure you learn the difference between a fal'C and a l'C, there will be a test at the end, and join me as I talk about Final Fantasy 13 released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 on December 17th, 2009 in Japan, and everywhere else on March 9th, 2010. Thanks for listening, guys. Enjoy the episode. And we're back. And by we, I, of course, mean me, because as you've no doubt gleaned from that introduction, I'm going solo this week to to talk to you about Final Fantasy 13. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit weird. I know we do the quick plays. I know I've done a ranking episode and what have you, but it's strange to do a full game without anyone to bounce off of. So I honestly have no idea how this is going to turn out. So, but we'll figure it out as we get there. So I suppose I should start off with, because we always start off with our history with the game, right? That's what we usually do. So Alan, what is your history with Final Fantasy? Well, Alan, my history with Final Fantasy started way back whenever it was that Final Fantasy VIII released, because Final Fantasy VIII was actually my first ever experience with Final Fantasy. I remember distinctly my stepsister got that game for one Christmas, and I'd never played a Final Fantasy game before. I'm not even sure I'd played a JRPG before that. And that opening cutscene, I don't care. Listen, I love Final Fantasy VIII for the record, but I know it's sort of a sore spot for some in the series. I love Final Fantasy VIII, but whether you like it or hate it, you cannot deny that that opening cutscene is perhaps one of the greatest in video game history. It is spectacular, and that's all it took to sell me on this entire series. So shortly after, I'd get my own copy of Final Fantasy VIII, play it, love it. And then I decided to check out some of the others. So I played Final Fantasy VII and then 9 onwards. Never played any of the original sort of 8/16-bit Final Fantasy games. Not until years later when I decided that what I was going to do was collect and play all of the Final Fantasy games in numerical order, including all of the offshoots and spin-offs and what have you. So I picked up Final Fantasy 1 and 2 for the Game Boy Advance a few years ago. And over the last couple of years, I've just been playing through every game in the series, which, of course, led us to Final Fantasy 13. And it was kind of weird, in so much that everyone I told this story to, when I said to them, "Oh, my next one is Final Fantasy 13," was usually met with, oh, Final Fantasy 13. Not sure about that one, mate." And I got to the point where I was just like, well, fuck, what is it about this game? Like, it seemed, I want to say it seemed entirely polarizing, but I would hear far more bad than I would good about Final Fantasy 13. And I was like, well, fuck, what is it about this game that is so different from Final Fantasy in general? So obviously, I when I set myself a task, I stick to it mostly. I might slack off here and there, but eventually I get round to it. And last year I played Final Fantasy 13 on the PlayStation 3 for the very first time, and I have a lot to say about it, which I'm going to do so now. But I don't think I agree with most of the naysayers. It's definitely different. It's having, again, played every Final Fantasy game up until that point, it definitely stands out. It is noticeably different from the normal Final Fantasy game, but I'm not sure that's such a bad thing. And I'm going to tell you why. Well, to start off with, of course, let's set the table. Hmm. Sorry, there are going to be pauses. Typically, I think I'm coming down with something, which is handy, literally just before I decide to record an entire episode by myself. So I might have to pause every so often, just for a drop of water to wet the old whistle, keep that whistle nice and moist. So Final Fantasy 13, for the most part, well, for all of it really, takes place on or around the planet of Gran Pulse. Um, your story, or our story, starts off on, I mean, I suppose it's kind of a moon, except it's not in orbit around the planet in so much. It's within the planet's atmosphere, as you find out later on. But yes, you and all the characters that you are with predominantly are from this tiny little satellite of Grand Pulse called Cocoon. And everything on Cocoon is run and maintained by these godlike creatures, I guess, called Fal'Cie. And basically, what the Foul Sea do is they keep the lights on, they keep the water going, they keep people fed, and what have you. And each one has a specific task that is assigned to it, and basically just keep Cocoon ticking over. Um, on the planet of Grand Pulse, there are also Foul Sea, and well, they not so much in charge of looking after human beings, but again, they maintain the planet, I guess. And I suppose I should pause here to let you know that I am not really looking any of this stuff up. This is from a game I played a little while ago, and what I wanted this episode to be is really an idiot's guide to Final Fantasy 13, because I am an idiot and this is my guide. I would like to shout out that I did have offers to give me a hand with this episode. Some of you are almost certainly listening, and I would like to thank you, but I wanted to be wrong if I was wrong. You know, this is my interpretation of the game, for better or worse. This is how I understood it and how I enjoyed it. And, you know, if I do get anything wrong, do feel free to let me know in the Discord or otherwise. But yeah, so if I do get anything wrong, what are you going to do? So yeah, so you have you have Cocoon, you have Grand Pulse, and they're basically locked in an almost Orwellian kind of Big Brother kind of, you know, those on Cocoon don't trust Pulse. Pulse is at war with Cocoon, but are they really? And it's every human on Cocoon is taught from an early age to fear Grand Pulse. And it does create an almost near hysteric level of paranoia about anything Pulse and Pulse related, to the extent that, God, where do I even begin with this fucking story? Okay, so the Foul Sea, these godlike creatures, can pick people from the population of Cocoon to do their bidding. And in doing so, they brand them and they become what is known as l'Cie. And obviously, if you've played the game before, you know all of this, and I'm just preaching to the choir. But l'Cie have their mission, their focus, which they need to achieve for the Foul Sea, and if they do, great. They are rewarded by being turned into crystals, because there we are again with crystals in Final Fantasy. And I guess promised eternal life somehow. Not sure how that works. Of course, if they fail their focus, they are turned into basically shambling crystal zombies known as Seath. Seath? I remember seeing the word. I think it's Seath, which is basically not an ideal state of affairs to be in. Of course, because nothing is ever easy, uh, they're not actually told what their focus is. They have visions and are left to interpret the visions to point them in the direction of what it is that they need to do for the Foul Sea, which is not very helpful, of course. It kind of sounds like just about every management system that I've been involved in, though. You know, very vague instructions, and you're left to get on with it. And if you don't do it correctly, you are punished with death. Uh, yeah. So, where was I? So yeah, you have these l'Cie, and these terms, just to put a pin in it there, these terms, Seath, l'Cie, Fal'Cie, they go heavy and they go hard on these terms in this game. Honestly, like I couldn't help but think, if I had a drink for every time any of those terms are mentioned in this game, I would never have made it. I would never have made it off Cocoon, which they do later on in the game. Spoilers. Um, but yeah, these terms are used an awful lot, so you will get used to hearing them. And if it sounds like I use them a lot, well, fuck me. Just play this game, because it's almost ridiculous how they throw these terms around. So that's your basic situation. Now, to go in a little bit on the story, just to kick us off. Now, you have all of our main characters are all on Cocoon for the most part. And at one point, they find, or basically the ruling council, the sanctum, or what have you, find a pulse fal'Cie. See, even I get it fucking confused, and I've played the game. They find a pulse fal'Cie on Cocoon, and that puts the shits up literally everyone. So there's a huge panic. Basically, they've been infiltrated by the enemy. And now the Sanctum, lovely bastards that they are, think, well, anyone in this town who may have been in contact with this fal'Cie is now potentially a servant of that creature. So, in a stunningly logical uh, piece of action, they decide to purge the entire area, which, for the most part, is basically chucking everyone out of Cocoon. I suppose killing those who resist. And that's kind of where we start the game. The fal'Cie has been found, and all of our characters are basically in the middle of this purge with a variety of different goals that they want to achieve that will invariably, of course, bring them all together in traditional Final Fantasy style. And if that seemed convoluted, it is. I think this is probably one of the more convoluted Final Fantasy games I've ever played. Um, I won't lie and say I understand every facet of the story, and there's going to be tons that I miss out, but that's my general understanding of it. Um, the enemy are down there, we're up here. If the enemy come here, then bad things will happen to literally everyone. Which leads us, I suppose, to our characters. And they are a rich and varied bunch, and I do very much like this team of characters. I think they're all very compelling. I think they're all very well acted and presented. I like some more than others. I suppose what's interesting about this game is that it's presented in a chapter style. So, you'll play as a couple of characters or a trio of characters or one character, what have you, for the majority of a chapter. And then at the end of said chapter, you'll swap to another couple of players. So you don't really get the entire team of characters until towards the end of the game, um, which is interesting. I mean, I can see how that might rub people who are into party management up the wrong way, but speaking as somebody who traditionally doesn't use every character in the game in a Final Fantasy game, like I thought this was a really good way of mixing things up and giving you a little bit of experience with all of the different characters. Quite clever in that respect. Um, so while all of these are sort of chapter based and you play with different characters, there's no, at least in my opinion, de facto like leader, I suppose. I mean, if it's anyone, it's going to be Lightning, who you've probably all seen on the box in all of the promotional material. I mean, if anyone is the main character of the game, it's Lightning, who is basically, so I guess she's part of the Cocoon military, uh, specifically the arm of the military that's charged with, I guess, keeping the peace on Cocoon, rather than the arm of the military who the name of which escapes me at the moment, which is purely engaged in things like the purge and keeping threats from Pulse under control. So Lightning is, you basically find her at the beginning of the game looking for her sister, who, as it turns out, found the post fal'Cie and has become a l'Cie herself. So she is off to rescue her sister, who is basically being held by this quote unquote evil godlike creature from the planet below. She is aided by Saz. I think it's Saz. He's an ex-military commercial pilot with dual pistols. I kind of your range character, I suppose. And I like Saz fine. He has quite an interesting story later on in the game, which we'll get into. I mean, obviously, this game is however many years old, so I'm gonna be spoiling the fuck out of it because I feel like I'm probably the last person who's played this game. So I think you probably already know all of this. Um, Along the way, you meet maybe my favorite character in the game. And I think a lot of people's favorite character in the game, Snow, who basically heads up, as far as I can remember, I guess a rebellion, a sort of rebellion against the Sanctum and its purges called Nora. And I guess he's almost your Zell from Final Fantasy VIII. He's endlessly chipper. He's always up for a fight, and generally you kind of your bruiser, I guess. And he's also engaged to Sarah, who is Lightning's sister, as we mentioned. And obviously he's there to do the same. He wants to help stop the purge, rescue Sarah, and generally just be an all-round nice guy to everyone. Unfortunately, somebody he doesn't realize he's not been a nice guy to is Hope, who is a young boy who I think was getting thrown out with the purge, who they happen to rescue, and he kind of accidentally gets his mother killed. Does Snow? Um, she decides to, I guess, join with the rebellion, and some shit goes down, and she falls to her death, and Hope then spends the entire rest of the game, more or less, hating Snow for it, planning to kill him and get his revenge, and again, that makes for a really interesting dynamic. Like, I liked the interplay between these two characters. Snow, of course, who is blissfully unaware of the fact that he is a hated and wanted man, and Hope, who is basically plotting to kill this guy, but trying his best to keep it under wraps because, he's a good kid, but he's a bit of a bitch, and he just can't ever bring himself to do it. Who else have we got? Uh, we have Vanille, who again also endlessly chipper. Probably my least favorite character in the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, her story and Fang, who we'll get to later, is absolutely fantastic, but there was just something about Vanille that I didn't get on with. I don't know if it was that style of voice acting that came with her that was very, I don't know, moany, and all those non-verbal utterances. I mean, to put it into perspective, like I was playing the game and my wife walked into the room and she literally just said, "What is happening to that girl? Like, it sounds vaguely sexual." And I couldn't disagree. Like, she makes a lot of very odd noises, and I just no, I didn't like that. I mean, sweet kid, but just got on my nerves. Yeah. Uh, Fuck. I think I didn't want to have to do this, but I am struggling for all of the characters in this game. I know that there is Fang, who is a very cool character. I mean, she is, for lack of a better term, kind of your Tifa of the game, I suppose. She's dark and mysterious and kind of a badass, and just always spoiling for a rumble, uh, with good reason. Absolutely, and I cannot find. I know I'm forgetting someone. So where were Lightning, Snow, Vanille, Saz, Hope, Bang. Oh no, that's all of them. All right, we are cooking. Um, so yeah, a good bunch of characters. They all have. What I really like about this game is that every character seems to have their own reason for being there, if that makes sense. Like, on in the process of trying to rescue Sarah, and through a variety of different coincidences, all of these characters end up at the Fal'Cie at the same time, and are subsequently turned into l'Cie themselves. So the very thing that they've been taught to fear all of their lives, they now have become. And they have a vision of something called Ragnarok, which is a creature rather than, the Norse Armageddon. Although, you can hear an argument for it being both. And they come to the conclusion that perhaps their focus is to destroy Cocoon. And that's basically what drives this game. Because now you have all of these characters with their own little stories, but they're united by this pressing need to complete their focus before time runs out and they are doomed to a life of crystally zombiehood. There you go. That's where we are with the story. And I like it. I like that all of these characters have their own personalities. They all have their own gripes. They all have their own goals and ambitions, and they all have their own different interpretations of their focus. Um, Good stuff. I like Zaz and his story about his son, who again was also made into a lessee, and he's trying to figure all of that out. Snow trying to get back to Sarah, who at this point, having brought them all together and set them on their path, essentially, has completed her focus by doing that and turned into a crystal. So he obviously wants to figure out what she wanted, how to bring her back. Lightning is obviously trying to do the same, but she doesn't like snow, so they're butting heads. There's a lot going on here character wise. And they're all very, very well. They're all very, very well acted. With the exception of a couple of vocal choices that I've been over already. There is a lot to like here. It has the usual, I suppose, Final Fantasy level of cheese. But by and large, they are all pretty good characters, particularly Snow, who is, if I recall correctly, voiced by uh someone called Troy Baker. And he does a really, really this Troy Baker does a really good job portraying Snow. I hope it works out for Troy Baker. I get the feeling we haven't seen the last of him. Uh, anyway, so what is a Final Fantasy game without combat? And this game has combat. It's kind of closer to a traditional JRPG in that you have your active timer bar, active timer battle bar, or what have you. You have your bar that builds up before you can attack. You know what I'm talking about. What's really interesting about this, though, is it will build up in segments, and you can sort of level up your experience to gain more of these ATB segments, and each attack will cost a certain number of segments. So your basic attacks will just cost one. Some of the other ones may cost two, may cost three, the more powerful moves. And you can basically stack attacks and then set them to go. And they will use these attacks basically in sequence, which clever thing, clever way of playing the game. You only play the one character though, and you're only responsible for whoever is your lead character at the time. The other characters on the team, be it two or three of them, are basically AI controlled. And the way that the game does this is through use of the paradigm system. So each character starts off the game with three potential paradigms that you can level them up in. Some are stronger in the more combat focused paradigms, like your commandos, or to an extent, your ravagers. Some are better as medics, some are better at was it synergists, sentinels, and these are basically I guess, the job system that you can level these characters up in. And you can, before a fight, set different combinations of these paradigms. So, for example, you could have what I tended to do is either have Lightning as a commando or a Ravager, maybe have, I don't know, Hope as a healer, and just go into the fight. So the AI characters are generally pretty good at reading the battlefield and responding appropriately. So when health started to get low, the healer in the group would go into overdrive and start firing out cure and what have you all over the place. When everyone's health was pretty high, maybe he'll do something else. Maybe he'll chuck out an Azuna or something like that. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, you only control the main character, whoever it may be. And generally I found that while you can stack your attacks, I would generally just let the computer just pick attacks for me, and it will just, I guess, randomly select attacks for you that are most appropriate for what you're doing. Now, the reason that I did that is because this battle system is incredibly fast paced. Um, Battles are very, very long and extremely strategic, I found. So it's not just a case of, whereas in most games you pick attack, you do your attack, you wait for the enemy to do their attack, you heal, you throw out some magic. In this game, everything's moving so quickly that you really have to keep an eye on every member of your team and switch your paradigms as is necessary. So as I said, you can set loads of different combinations of paradigms for any of the characters that you're using. So you might have, I don't know, Commando, Ravager, Ravager. You might have Ravager, Synergist, Sentinel, or something like that. And you can switch between these combinations of paradigms literally on a dime. And sometimes you really have to. Like, you can set your team to go all out attack, and then as you see the health starting to get low, you can switch so that you've got a more defensive and healing combination of characters to bolster your health back up. Then maybe you can switch to something that's a little bit of attack, a little bit of buffing to either debuff the enemies or buff yourselves. And then you can just, when you're happy, go back to just a full on attack. And I loved that about this game. Like, I will admit that the fights, even just your basic grunt fights that you find out in the world, they do take a long time. You know, none of the fights in this game were sort of quick one and done, slap, 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 off you go. You just about any fight you get into, you have to think your way through, which admittedly did get a little bit long in the tooth by the end game. And as for the bosses, man, forget about it. Like, some of these fights can go on for fucking ages. And it's fun, don't get me wrong, because at least you're not just button mashing. You are like keeping an eye on your health bars. You are swapping the team members around. You are swapping their roles. Like, you are constantly on guard as to what might be happening next. So you really are engaged in this battle system. I just maybe, I don't know, wish some of the fights were a little bit shorter. Especially some of the boss fights, like Barthandalus, I think is his name, who you fight later on in the game. It's like, that is a real war of attrition because they have health bars that are just ridiculously long. But that being said, if it's going to be a long drawn out boss fight, I'd sooner have a combat system that's going to keep me engaged. And this one really, really did. That whole paradigm system, big, big, big plus for me. Really, really appreciated it. And of course, you know, this being a bit of a different Final Fantasy game, you don't really level up, quote unquote, in the traditional way. Like, every fight you get Crystarium points, Crystallium points, something. Anyway, they're basically points that you can spend on what is very much like the sphere grid in Final Fantasy X. You can sink points into any of these I guess jobs, roles, or what have you for any particular character. And there are some that they will specialize in, so it takes less points to spend in. And there are some that they're maybe not so good at, so it takes more. At least that was my understanding of it. Uh, and, you know, being a chapter based game, you can only level so far before you've basically filled that grid. And then you'll get to an end of a certain chapter and it'll say, extra levels of the Crystarium or what have you have been opened, and then you can start leveling up some more. And again, you know, you could hypothetically just throw all of your points literally anywhere you want. You know, maybe, I don't know, Lightning starts off with 3 different roles. By the end of the game, every character has every job open to them, so you can start leveling up in everything. It would take a ridiculous amount of grinding to fill up that entire grid, and I did not do it. I basically stuck to leveling up what was best for a certain character's, I guess, strength and or magical power or what have you. So, you know, if somebody had a higher magical stat, I would invest more in their I guess, Ravager or Medic or something like that, just to really make the most of that magical boost. And, if they were a stronger character, then I would, I don't know, put more into Commando, or if they had more HP, I would put them into Sentinel, like my boy Snow there. Just arguably one of the best Sentinels in the game because he can take a fucking beating and no mistake. But again, you really have to think about what you want to invest your points in because if you're specializing in stuff, great. If you're just spreading your points all over the place willy nilly, um, you're probably going to find yourself a little bit underpowered. So it pays to play to every character's strength and then set their paradigms accordingly. So that again, you can switch these characters and have literally the best healer on the team doing the job that he's supposed to do, the best synergist, you know, with the best spells to do what he needs to do or she needs to do. Um, so yeah, like it sounds pretty overwhelming, but it's really quite simple. Like I would argue it's maybe simpler than the sphere grid. I mean, it looks pretty daunting, but if you just know what you want each character to do, it's very easy to level them up and have the best kind of that type of role on your team. Again, the problem with that, of course, is that at least in the early going, you're switching between pairs of characters, trios of characters. So that, I don't know, healer, say Hope from chapter 2 or what have you, you might start chapter 3 and you don't have that healer anymore. So it's always good to keep characters with maybe one main specialty and then a backup specialty just so that you can fall back on that as well. So, you know, have Vanille be a healer as well. She's pretty good with magic. So yeah, that's the combat. That's the leveling system. Kind of shades of earlier Final Fantasy games, but I would argue a bit more strategic, a bit more technical. Certainly more so than Final Fantasy 12, which again had a similar system, but I think they really refined it in this one. What we need to talk about, of course, is the elephant in the room, which is one of the most common complaints that would come up while I was talking about playing this game, is that it's a hallway simulator. It's very, very linear. You just go from A to B. There's no open world or what have you, which is true. I will give you that. It is certainly in the first three quarters of the game. It is a very, very linear experience, one where you are literally hemmed into corridors, basically. I mean, don't get me wrong, these corridors are map based rather than scenery based. It might look like a very open area, but you are restricted to a very narrow path on it. Enemies, of course, in that most beautiful of new RPG styles, are present on the screen wherever you go. So there are no um, random encounters. You basically find enemies, they are there, you can engage with them, you can ignore them altogether. Beautiful. I love that as a gaming mechanic. I mean, I don't hate random encounters, but I like being able to choose if I want to fight or if I don't. And generally speaking, like most times in this game, I did choose to fight because, I wanted to upgrade that Crystarium as quickly as I could. But it's nice that you can avoid fights. Sometimes you'll find monsters or what have you fighting each other. And, if you get the drop on one of them, sneak up on them, then you can get obviously your preemptive attacks in, and it can be very useful. The monsters and what have you, generally, as you fight them, they have. This is something I didn't mention during the combat, actually. Um, Very, very difficult to do any physical damage to literally any of the enemies without first doing something that will stagger the enemy. And what this is the enemies are susceptible to a certain type of attack that if you do enough of it, it will build up their stagger bar. I can't think of what the actual name of it is, and they will enter a staggered state by which you can literally just then unload on them, and you'll start doing proper. proper HP damage until that bar of theirs then works its way back down, and then you need to switch back. So again, for example, using a Ravager to really bring up that stagger bar, and then wallop, go back to commando, and you can start just unloading on them. Just again, another little bit of tactics in the game that really makes you think around battles. You know, they may have been a bit long, but they were not they were not without engagement, shall we say. But yeah, it is an incredibly linear game. Like, I will grant you that. I don't know that that's exactly a problem, though. I think the only reason that that is a problem for this game is because it has the name Final Fantasy on it. And okay, there are no towns you can visit. There's nowhere that you can really, no shops you can buy items from. Any items you buy literally from the save point. There are shops through the save points that you can buy stuff from. And I hear that it's a bit of a not empty game, but it doesn't have that sort of rich kind of world that you're used to in a Final Fantasy game. The thing with that is I think it serves the story better that way. Because bear in mind, I mean, these guys are now basically feared and hated by everyone on Cocoon. They're not going to be going into villages. They're not going to be going into shops. They're not going to be chilling out and interacting. They're not going to go to the Golden Saucer and start chocobo racing or what have you. You know, they are literally on the run from everyone. So it does make sense to keep them on the down low, keep them hidden from society in general. And yes, there's not an awful lot of exploration in this game. You know, it's you are very there's your checkpoint, there's your path, go there, fight a boss or something, move on. But with a story like this, where the main, I suppose, driving force behind the entire thing is that these guys are on the clock. They are literally staring down the barrel of an unimaginable existence if they failed their focus. I suppose it wouldn't really make sense to have them free roaming and wasting time. You know, I think sometimes an open world can dampen the pacing of a story a bit, which was one of my main complaints with Star Wars, not Fallen Order. What was the second one? Fuck. You know, the Jedi Fallen Order 2. I don't know, it's late, I'm tired. Um, which had more of the open world to it. And it just, the story suffered because of it. Like, if you are trying to create an urgency about the story, then having your characters go off and explore and play games and things like that, it does sort of cheapen that somewhat. So I don't hate the fact that this is a rather linear game. You know, in fact, I think it creates a sense of urgency that gets you to those story beats quicker, keeps the story fresh in your mind, reminds you of the urgency of what's happening. As convoluted a story as this is, if I then spent, I don't know, 20 hours roaming around doing something else, like, I wouldn't have the fucking clue what was going on when I came back to the main story. Now, that being said, all this aside, there is a part of the story about three-quarters of the way in where all of that changes. And this is probably one of my major gripes about the game, if I'm honest. Mm. So, and again, spoilers, about three-quarters of the way through the game, your team escape from Cocoon and decide to take refuge on the planet below, the vast, scary, untamed wilderness that is Grand Pulse. And that is, in essence, your open world. To an extent. I mean, we're not talking about open worlds like any other Final Fantasy game where you can literally fly anywhere, do anything, but it is far more open than everything else. And far from being a relief, I found this to be almost a sticking point. When I was talking to Brian about this game, I said that I'd basically set the game down for a while and intended to come back to it at some point. And my man hit the nail on the head when he said, "You just got to pulse, didn't you?" I was like, "Fuck, you're right. Yes, I did." And the reason for this is having played the vast majority of the game with this fast-paced, action-packed story, uh, every corridor was leading me to a new goal. To then suddenly bring the pace to a screeching halt when you get to pulse, and the game basically essentially asks you to do side missions. Now, you've not had side missions anywhere else in the game so far, but you're in the back end, and suddenly you're on pulse. There are these crystal Seath. Basically, I suppose it's the final evolutionary form of the Seath. They just turn into giant crystals, and it's full of regret. They want you to finish their focus so that they can rest or something. I don't know. And the entire Pulse map is covered in these things, and it's usually go here, kill this strong enemy, and then come back and receive reward. But the thing is, I couldn't be bothered at this point. Now, I love JRPGs, mm, but when I've gotten used to playing a certain way through the majority of the game, you do always get to a point where you sort of think, ah, you know what, I'm kind of ready to put this to bed now and play something else. What this game does is it expects you to change the entire way that you play the game and make it more like a traditional JRPG. And by that point, I was just like, no, 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 I don't really want more of the game now. Like I'm in that sort of bring it to a close, get to the end zone phase. Like don't suddenly open this up and give me a whole slew of side missions because to be fair, I did like I don't know, a handful and I was just like, you know what, forget this. Like I just want to see the end. And that's what I did, which is it's a very interesting design choice for this game, I think. And I'm not quite sure why that may. It kind of feels like they got cold feet about this not being an open world game and decided to sort of shoehorn it in last minute, and it doesn't really work for me. Yeah, so I kind of skipped most of that content and literally just went for the end game back on Cocoon. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was lovely to be down on Grand Pulse because it is huge and open and very, very beautiful to look at. And that's something else I didn't mention about this game. I mean, this game looks stunning. Like, even for a PlayStation 3 game, like playing it last year, like I was blown away by how fucking good this game looks. Like all of the characters are just beautifully rendered, whether it's cutscene or not. Everything just looks on just that other level. I mean, that's Square for you, right? I mean, even back then, playing Final Fantasy VIII for the first time, it was just like, wow, this looks unreal. This looks unlike anything I've ever played before. And to be fair, you know, it's kind of laughable now when you look at it, you know, thinking back to Squall being the most good looking guy in the room when his face is basically an omelette of pixels. Um, but this game holds up. Like, I genuinely think you could release this now and I don't think it would look any better. You know, I think it looks absolutely stunning. I mean, again, to go back to it while I was playing it, you know, during that last assault back on Cocoon, my wife looked over at the game and said, "Wow, this looks absolutely stunning." And it's true. Like it is really eye-catching. It is gorgeous and graphically 10 out of 10. Just absolutely fantastic. Um but yeah, it's I don't know. It's just very interesting that they decided to do that in the end game. Sorry, I went on a rant there and just kind of lost my place in my own brain. You know, for the record, I am a terrible terrible podcaster. I don't make notes. I should. So all of this is just basically just the ramblings of a madman, and I hope it's all making sense. Um, so yeah, you've got this team of people. They have their focus. They're trying to get out of or fulfill their focus. They're pretty sure that their focus means destroying Cocoon. And while we're talking about the end, this is where my understanding of things kind of breaks down somewhat. So obviously they have their mission. They think they need to destroy Cocoon. And to that effect, every time that they sort of falter in their mission, and again, this is another Final Fantasy staple, every time they falter or look like they're going to falter in their mission, in their focus, they basically summon an Eidolon. I've never Guardian Force from Final Fantasy VIII, summon monsters, whatever you want to call them, GF. Um, but they are summoned to basically, I guess, kind of kick the shit out of you to either kill you or like, dude, like get the fuck back on with this. Like, what are you doing? And then after you beat this Eidolon, you get to use them in battle, which I never did. I'll be honest, there was maybe once or twice. I mean, again, they look fucking cool. Like every member of the team has their own Eidolon, and they're amazing to look at. And you know, you've got your usuals, your Shiva, your Ifrit, yeah, all of that. But they all have a sort of almost biomechanical feel to them, where they can turn into vehicles for some reason, and you can spend part of the fight riding around on them, and it's just like it's all very, very cool. I've gotten to that point now that I don't actually use summons in just about any Final Fantasy game anymore. I'd much sooner use buffs, debuffs, fight with the strength of my own team, because I find that generally speaking summons, unless they're a Hail Mary to end the game, or you're fighting the weapons from Final Fantasy VII, they're almost useless. And that's my opinion. Come at me. Um but yeah, so having escaped from Cocoon, they spend some time down on Pulse, and they find out that Vanille and Fang were basically l'Cie from hundreds of years ago, when Pulse and Cocoon, I guess, first went to war. And these two were charged with becoming Ragnarok and destroying Cocoon for some reason. We'll get to that. And obviously, they failed, kind of. Their Cocoon took a beating, but they kind of failed and were kept on ice until the next time it came along. And here's where things get confusing. So my understanding is that the Sanctum is run by what is effectively, and unbeknownst to everyone, one of these fal'Cie. And Barthandalus, I think his name is. Bitch of a fight. Fuck me. Just so long. And he basically tells you that they miss their daddy. They miss their maker. The maker created all of these fal'Cie and then fucked off somewhere, and they don't know where. So what they want to do is try to call him back to them. And the way that they've done this is they have cultivated a world full of human beings up in the sky. Cocoon. Obviously, huge spoilers inbound. Um, and the idea is that they need fal'Cie because they can't do this themselves. They need fal'Cie to go in there and kill Orphan, the fal'Cie that basically keeps all the other ones doing their jobs. So if this thing is killed, Cocoon will basically fall out of the sky, kill every human being on Cocoon, and that sacrifice they think will be enough to bring back their god, their maker. With me so far? Okay. Obviously, to do this, they need the l'Cie to turn into Ragnarok to kill Orphan and do this horrible, horrible thing. And basically, this is where I get confused. And this is why I didn't want anyone to tell me what was what, because you can all come at me in Discord and what have you and let me know. But my understanding of it is this. So our team go back to Cocoon, fully aware that this is the situation, fully aware that this is something that they need to stop. And in order to do this, they go and confront Orphan and fight it and kill it. And that's where they lose me, because I'm thinking basically they wanted to stop the fal'Cie from killing Orphan, sacrificing Cocoon. And in order to do this, they go and fight and kill Cocoon. Okay, I guess on their own terms, and I guess they're not using Ragnarok. They've sworn off that future or what have you, and it's just like I don't really understand that. Yeah, why is that the play? Maybe someone can explain it to me. But basically, by killing Orphan, Cocoon starts to fall out of the sky, and Fang and Vanille finally become Ragnarok and turn into a giant crystal that then holds Cocoon back up in the sky. And everyone is safe and everyone is happy. And most of the other crystal people come back to life, and it's a whole thing. Stunning ending. I just don't fucking understand any of it. It baffles me. So if you get it, please come and tell me what I've gotten wrong there. Um, but yeah, so that's the story in a nutshell. And obviously, there's plenty of other stuff that happens in the meantime. Very rich, very full, very interesting story. But I think the heart of this game is the characters and their interactions. Like, I suppose it's the same with any Final Fantasy game, right? You know, you have this big overarching threat to the world at large, but really it's the characters that are the heart of the game and what they go through, what they win, what they lose, and seeing this mismatched bunch of just I don't even know what to describe them as, just misfits. Yeah, good enough. Slowly and organically come together over time. You know, Hope and Snow reconcile their differences and become firm friends. Uh, Vanille, who is responsible for Saz's child being one of these doomed l'Cie, they reconcile their differences and then they all come together for the greater good. You know, it's really well, it's a story really well told, which is why while I was playing it, I couldn't help but think that this is a game that would have made a fantastic series. And I think maybe to some extent that's really what they wanted to do. They didn't want to make a Final Fantasy game in the traditional sense. They wanted to make something more cinematic, something with a faster pace, something that was a bit more linear. I mean, this would work absolutely fantastic as a fucking series, or not so much a film, but definitely an animated series. It certainly would be better than The Spirits Within, which, although I didn't hate, I just don't think they really got their audience. Spirits Within is an okay film. But nobody who doesn't know what Final Fantasy is going to watch Spirits Within, and Spirits Within was not necessarily made for Final Fantasy fans, um, so kind of missed their audience there. But I digress. This is a very fantastically cinematic piece of game. Um, is it a Final Fantasy game? No, not really. I think if you called this anything else, people would not have the gripes with it that they do. I think this would be held in much higher regard. I think it is because it is such a jarring shift from the traditional Final Fantasy series that people have that sort of knee-jerk reaction to it. But sort of playing it so many years removed from all of the hype and the not disgust, but the hype and the disappointment and all of that. You know, I just it was a fun little action JRPG. And obviously, it wouldn't be a Final Fantasy game if we didn't talk about the music. I mean, the music is it's Final Fantasy music. I don't think it's oh god, what's his name? You know it. You're shouting it at me. Oh, I can't think of it right now. The usual guy, the usual composer. Fuck. No, I don't think it is. But whoever did the music on this game, because I can't find that information right now, because again, as I said, no notes, really did a fantastic job. Obviously, I haven't this the intro's not done, nothing like that's done. I'm almost certain that Snow's theme is going to make an appearance on this episode. If I know anything about Brian, he's already licking his lips at adding that either to the start or the middle of the episode. But again, the music just adds to that grand cinematic appeal of this game. And that's what it is. It is a very cinematic experience. I don't regret playing it. Not at all. I mean, is it my favorite Final Fantasy game? No, not at all. Is it the worst Final Fantasy game? Also, no. And I'm not going to expand on that because if you ask me what my least favorite Final Fantasy game is, I couldn't tell you right now because I really love this series. You know, they're all on a par. So yeah, I'm going to steer clear of that until one of you reprobates decides to ask me in a 9-bit banter box or something. Oh my god, that was a lot of talking. I hope it all made sense. You know, I hope this episode lands. I suppose I'll wrap up with my final thoughts. I've almost certainly missed something, and I'm sure I'll hear about it. Please do let me know. Let me know what you think. But final thoughts. Well, this is a fine game. You know, I went into it with some amount of trepidation. Of course, not knowing what people were talking about. You know, I'd had no experience with this game. I mean, I basically stopped back when I was young at Final Fantasy X. So I missed quite a lot of Final Fantasy that I'm making my way through now, and I can understand, if not agree with, people's disdain for this. It is a very, very different Final Fantasy game, and I can see how for some who are expecting the usual Final Fantasy is kind of like a comfort food, isn't it? And if somebody changes the ingredients, it might still taste good, but it's not the same. So I agree, if not agree, I appreciate the the many complex feelings about this game. But my experience is that this is a beautifully presented, wonderfully soundtracked, fantastically voice acted, complex and strategic in its combat, very storied game. You know, I was engrossed the whole way through. I genuinely wanted to find out the whole way through, what was the focus? What are we doing? You know, how are these characters who basically hate each other going to reconcile their differences and come together at the end? You know, every part of the story of this game made me want to play more of this game. You know, the minor gripe of the game slowing down in the back, I guess, quarter. Not even that. I mean, it's, you know, if you avoid most of the stuff on Grand Pulse, it's really not that big a section, but it is daunting when you're used to being so linear up until that point. Um, so yeah, just a wonderful, wonderful game. I don't regret playing it. I have got 13.2 and Lightning Returns upstairs, and I will definitely be playing them. I'll be looking forward to playing them as well. And I don't know, I'll maybe get to 13.2 later on this year if I get some time to squeeze in a potentially 40 to 50 hour long RPG. You know, if you have any if you have any thoughts and feelings on that, then again, contact me, let me know. Um, but no, I am happy to say that I like Final Fantasy 13 quite a lot. And to that effect, I'll probably give it something like a 7 point. You know what? I don't think we do this, but I'm going to give it a 7.75. I don't know if we do that, but it's my episode, and I'll do whatever the fuck I want. Damn it, because it's not an 8, it's not a 7.5. It's somewhere in the middle, so it's 7.75. And you know, if Sam and Brian don't like it, well, they know where to find me in England. Oh God, I need a smoke after that, and I don't even smoke. Um, thanks for listening, guys. Honestly, again, I hope that this wasn't just a complete ramble. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoy all of our episodes. And if you do, why not give us a review and let us know that you enjoyed the episode? And if you have, of course, anything that you'd like to talk about with us, then please, you know, find any of our socials at Linktree /Retrotopia. That's linktr.ee/Retrotopia. Join the Discord, have your say, come and have a chat with us, join our Patreon, all of that good stuff. And until next time, I usually have a sign off for these things, but this time I don't. So I'll just say goodbye, and snow is awesome. Goodbye.